Live from Happy Valley Studios, it's the MCS1 show. And now, your host, MCS1.
Welcome to another exciting edition of the MCS1 show. I am MCS1, and with me once again is my executive producer, Casey Walker.
Yo, what's up?
Welcome once again, Casey. It is a pleasure to have you
It's
here.
a pleasure being here.
Okay, we have a lot to discuss today.
Oh, it's a treat.
So today we're going to continue our wonderful new series that we've adopted for Season 3.
Happy Valley Hate.
That is right, people. I had a lot of things I wanted to discuss in a certain order, but in light of current events, we will be discussing a meth bust that occurred recently in Provo, Utah. And this is quite the story, people. This is great. Let me give a little bit of background about myself before I get into this meth bust. I've worked in student housing a total of 4 years now, maybe going on 5. Don't want it to be a career, but it's turning into that. One place I worked was known as the Riviera Apartments. It was right next to BYU Stadium. The slogan for it was "Live the Riv," because they called it the Riv for short. I guess it sounds cool. I don't know.
Catchy, I guess.
Catchy. Stupid. The Riv is where I worked, and I'm not gonna lie, I had one boss there who was super cool. Wonderful lady, pleasure to work with, and I enjoyed working there for quite a long time. I enjoyed most of my co-workers. There were a few that were pretty awful, not gonna lie there, but overall, for a long time, my experience was fairly positive. And then a new year hit, like a new school year, and a ton of jerks moved in.
Oh, no.
And it was like all 18 and 19-year-olds. The interesting thing is the Riviera, there's 2 types of apartments. There's 4-person apartments, and there's 6-person apartments. And these are all shared rooms, by the way. And these shared rooms also have no locks. I worked at this Riviera Apartments as an RA. I worked in the office, I did cleaning checks, dealt with problems, all that student housing stuff. Everyone kind of knew me as the guy who worked at the Riv, I guess, because I did it for so long, and I would always say, "Live the Riv!" as a joke to be funny. Now that we've gotten that out of the way about the Riv, let's talk about this meth bust that took place. So here we found a couple articles concerning this meth bust. And so what happened was, on Friday, November 7th, the Provo police, and the fire departments responded to a report of drug use around noon at the Riviera Apartments. Now, the best part is it's like they responded to a report of drug use, the police and the fire people. Now, hold on. Let's just say someone's like smoking a joint in one apartment. Would the police and the fire trucks show up for that?
If he's got a joint and the joint's smoking a little bit, gotta hose him down with that fire hose.
I guess so. You take that. Get that marijuana smell out of here. So I'm wondering how much is really going on in Provo for the whole police and fire departments
Not a lot.
to show up.
I haven't seen very many house fires.
Next it says an article, and this is, by the way, is from the Brigham Young University paper known as the BYU Universe. And we'll provide links to this in the description. So it says police officials at the scene could not comment about the incident. But BYU student, and then it says the person's name, said one of his roommates was allegedly producing methamphetamine in his apartment bedroom. He said him and his other roommates reported the suspected tenant to Riviera Apartments manager that morning, and then the management called the police. Here we go. 2 fire trucks, 1 police car, 1 hazmat vehicle were dispatched to investigate and manage the situation. Like manage the situation? What are you gonna do?
I like how there's more fire trucks than police cars.
Yeah, it's like, was there a meth fire? Well, maybe there was. So there was a fire that occurred. This is pretty interesting. And it happened previously. So the person who narked on him said that he and his roommate heard a fire alarm sound in the suspicious tenant's bedroom on November 6th, the day before. They opened the door and found him extinguishing a fire on a bedroom carpet. The narc and the other roommates rushed to help put the fire out. The narc and his roommates investigated further after the suspected tenant left to visit a friend in the hospital. They picked the lock and discovered alcohol containers and, quote, a lot of sketchy things.
A lot of sketchy things.
End quote. So, let's analyze this real quick. Previously, I said the Riviera apartment had shared rooms.
Right.
Of which none of these shared rooms have locks on them. That's not allowed.
So they picked a lock.
But yet they picked the lock here.
That doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist. Or it may exist. I mean, it could exist.
Yes, it could exist.
It could exist, but what baffles me is there's 3 of these people in this apartment. And one of them shares a room with this, quote, meth maker. And so, this meth maker, this Mini Heisenberg, he's not exactly, like, having the room to himself. He's got another roommate. Why couldn't the other roommate just open up the door? Or if he's got a key in, why are they saying...
Where was that guy? Like, what?
Yeah, what's going on here?
What was he doing?
How come they had to, quote, pick a lock? So that doesn't make much sense here. So anyway, moving on with the article. The Riviera Apartments management has since relocated the narc and his roommates to another apartment. BYU student and Riviera resident, Desiree Moss, felt embarrassed about the situation because she lives at the Riviera apartment and knows the suspected tenant. And here's the quote she said. I'm surprised the Riviera didn't catch him themselves. The Riviera should have been on top of it through cleaning checks, end quote.
Maybe, I guess. Cleaning checks are like a big deal with like apartments here.
Yeah.
Like they have them like all the time.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I did clean checks at the Riviera apartments every other month. And people still complain. They said that was too much for cleaning checks. So this girl's getting angry because the Riviera management isn't constantly watching over her or everyone else to make sure that the apartments are clean. You're 18 and above. I would assume by now you should be able to be clean, and if your roommates aren't clean, you should be able to have enough, adult courage to talk to people about being clean.
That's just how like the community is. It's just like everyone's supervised by someone, like, and it's completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
But like even this roommate who's allegedly, or this guy who's allegedly making methamphetamine in his room, who she knew, no one else knew about it until now. Even his roommate.
Yeah.
No clue. It's just like it's.
Oh yeah, he was making meth. Another resident named Amy Peterson felt uncomfortable with with police and the firefighters present, but she said she wasn't surprised about the situation because, quote, because there are some interesting people who live here, end quote.
That's like another thing that like there's a lot of exaggeration in the way people talk around here. So like she says she's not surprised.
Not surprised
that there's a potential meth lab in this Christian college dorm room.
Exactly.
It's like that. It's like the idea of that. Oh yeah, some guy's making meth at the BYU housing.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. That doesn't surprise me. Like what?
How would that not surprise you?
That surprises everyone.
Yeah. I worked there. I lived there. There was no meth lab. There were probably people doing drugs. Yeah, there were people doing drugs.
I'm sure there were.
People having sex or whatever.
Of course.
Lots of random stuff. It's college. But there's never, like, a meth lab.
Yeah, that's like...
I can just see it now. The next article is going to come up. Human trafficking found at BYU student housing.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
The students were not surprised by this, as there are a lot of interesting people here. I just looked at him on the day he moved in. I knew he was in charge of a human trafficking ring. Like, that's the kind of people that...
Yeah, and that's like, I think that's like one thing that's like big about this article too, is like the exaggeration about the entire meth lab, and we don't even know if it's a meth lab because there's suspicion.
Next article, this is from KSL, a local Utah news outlet. And it said the police were looking for a person on Saturday, a person of interest, who they say may have been cooking methamphetamine out of his apartment near BYU. Doesn't that just sound ridiculous? Like that whole thing. Like,
oh yeah.
I don't see that really happening. And like, let's take this to a different perspective. Let's say like USC, UCLA, bigger colleges. I'm using California as an example. Like a block away cooking meth Could you see that happening at any other school? I couldn't.
Yeah.
Like, even any other school. And BYU, which is like a strict Christian school. And yet people are not surprised by this. So let's move on. One of the Provo police officers said, at that point, when they broke in with, now they say it was a hairpin, when they broke into this room, this shared room, that one of the other roommates shares with this Eisenberg, they found suspicious glassware and chemicals, and they contacted the Riviera management. It goes on, and then the police and fire officials identified this as a fully operational meth lab. It wasn't just a small shake-and-bake meth lab that was more common, either. Fully shake-and-bake meth lab. It's Breaking Bad meets Talladega Nights. Shake and bake!
What does that even mean?
They get in these cars or whatever, and they shout, shake and bake! And they're driving, and one of them propels the other one while they make meth in their cars or something. I don't know. That's ridiculous. Anyway, afterwards, the Utah Department of Health quarantined the apartment, and it will have to undergo extensive cleaning process before other occupants can live there again. The thing about the Riviera is it's like the whole Riviera needs to undergo an extensive cleaning process.
Well, what's funny is like the thing with like Provo student housing, which is like a whole nother thing, but like there's like a problem with it is like they're just like sucking the money out of these kids. Normally with like a meth house and like a meth lab, they shut the place down. They board up the windows. They block off the doors.
Yeah.
They cut it. They completely isolate it so no one can live there because it's a really dangerous place. But here at the Riv, this BYU student housing place, they're just trying to milk it and just clean it. That doesn't.
And here's the interesting thing about that. When I worked there, the Riviera was owned by another management company, which actually, oddly enough, owns a company called the Branberry, another student housing complex. And the Branberry is notorious for rapes that happened, which we'll be discussing in future episodes. But eventually the Riviera was sold for a ton of money to actual BYU. So BYU owns it right now. And so, it's next door to Brigham Young University campus. They just bought this. It's like they're not going to want to tear this down. It's crazy. And I honestly do kind of feel bad for BYU in this situation. So, the other roommates are not considered suspects, though, because their actions were reasonable, and they did not have access to the room with the meth lab inside, and called the apartment management when they found out. Bullcrap! It's a shared room. You have access.
Yeah, I don't know how they didn't have access.
Yeah, I want to know. Was he like, hey guys, I'm going to be making stuff in my room. You can't come in, even though you right there are paying probably, I don't know, $300 to $400 a month to share a room with me. You can't come in ever. So you have to sleep on the couch. Well, I perform my experiments. This whole thing is crap.
Yes.
So
pretty sketchy.
Let's move on away from the article. So this is basically phase 1, or part 1, of this whole Riviera meth bust thing. And then after this, I went through these articles and I found some of these comments, and they were just crazy, which is total Happy Valley in a nutshell. Some of the comments that were on here were really interesting. People were like, why were they busting into this kid's room? Doesn't he have rights and stuff? I'd be more concerned about these roommates. And it's like what Casey said earlier, a criminal to catch a criminal. But these are shared rooms. One of these 3 musketeers that reported Heisenberg, they share a room with him.
I know.
So, what's going on here?
And even if they did, if there really was a lock on the door and they actually had to pick it, what are the odds that, one of those kids actually knows how to pick a lock?
Well, they probably Googled it. Everything's on Google these days.
Yeah.
And Provo has Google Fiber.
You don't, like a faithful, Christian LDS kid,
that's not something. Pick locks.
Yeah, you don't really know how to pick locks.
Well, maybe they had a lockpick gun. You can buy a lockpick gun on $60. For $60 on Amazon.
Only if you're planning on doing
exactly
dubious things.
It's the whole thing is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
And so those were the comments that were following. So I didn't even know about this article until this meth bust, until someone posted it on my Facebook wall, and then people just lit up, with their comments and stuff, and it was pretty entertaining. And so one thing about LDS culture that's really interesting is they have a thing called home teaching. And that's where once a month, two males from the LDS church will go, and they'll go and talk to and visit people within their little congregation, just check up on them, make sure they're doing well and they have no issues. So there's this awful disgrace of a Facebook page that is just a complete horrible thing called BYU memes, and it's just literally the scum of the earth. So the BYU meme that was posted was actually funny, and it shows Jesse and Walt from Breaking Bad, and it says on there, and if you're watching this from YouTube instead of just listening, here's a picture of it. It says, "Welcome to Riviera, the Riviera. We're your home teachers." And I thought that was pretty good. That was pretty clever. You know, having Jesse and Walt, these meth dealers, makers, being the home teachers. That was pretty genius.
Well, thank goodness for Breaking Bad, though.
Yeah.
Because, like, had these kids not watched Breaking Bad, they probably would have walked in that room after picking that lock and not even known what they walked in upon.
Yeah, they walked in and they're just like...
Instantly, they knew.
They knew. They're like, oh my gosh, that's a ton of methylamine. I bet he stole this from a train and then shot some kid and buried him in the desert. And then this drug dealer roommate of ours gave his parents a ton of money just for the heck of it.
And then the other guy says, I'm not surprised that happened.
Yeah, I'm not surprised either.
That's just...
You know?
Thank goodness for Breaking Bad.
Yeah, thank you, Breaking Bad, wherever you are. And then, in addition to that whole thing with the BYU memes, I figured I would make my own. And so, because BYU is so conservative, obviously this awful disgrace of a page known as BYU memes isn't going to put something that's kind of vulgar up. So I put a picture, my own meme. This right here is Jesse Pigpen. And if you watch Breaking Bad, he says the word bitch like a ton every episode. So I put, live the Riv, bitch! And yeah, I shared that over Facebook, because obviously it's not going to go to BYU memes because it's a horrible page and I'll never put anything that's actually classy up or funny. I love memes. I think they're really funny. So let's go into hashtags. So I got some good hashtags that I came up with for this that I was using for when I was sharing this picture. One of them was obviously hashtag Live the Riv, which I used to do all the time. Another one that was a pretty good one, close second to my favorite. This is Mething Around at the Riv. And then finally, my favorite one. This is Breaking BYU.
That's
hashtag Breaking BYU.
That's my favorite.
That's a good one. I gotta tweet that more often. So afterwards, a couple of days went by, and Casey was in. He was following the story from Cambodia.
Yeah, I was in Cambodia at the time.
Cambodia of all places, and he's following this story because it's just too good to pass out.
It's all over Facebook. It's great.
Yeah, it's just blowing up because there's nothing going on. And so Casey, give a summary of the article that you posted to me. You don't have to just sum it up real quick about what we found.
Basically, there's an article that says his lawyer, he has an attorney, and his attorney
named Saul, by the way.
Named Saul.
Ironically, Saul Goodman.
His attorney,
a criminal lawyer,
that he's not actually making meth, but he's actually makes soap in his pastime, and that's what they found in his room was soap. And but if he is convicted and found guilty of having a meth lab in his room, he could serve up to life in prison. That's which I think is a little harsh because child molesters serve like a year, and this kid makes meth on his own, minding his own business.
Not bothering anyone. Cause a small fire.
Maybe stinking up the place a little bit.
Riviera always smells.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so...
adding to the charm of the place.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, he potentially, for minding his own business, is gonna get life in prison when, some dude, totally messes up this kid's life who may turn out to be a mass murderer because of the things that he's seen.
Yeah.
It only gets, a year in prison, so...
That's
just a little thing that I noticed. But yeah, there's just a lot of interesting twists and turns to this meth lab.
The lawyer said concerning this that nothing could be further from the truth. He makes organic soap. He does herbal extract. He's kind of into the organic chemistry thing. It's the Mormon equivalent of brewing your own beer.
I don't know if it's the same thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't really call it the same thing.
It's brewing your own beer. I feel like that's a pretty common pastime. But
yeah.
Making your own soap,
I don't really
Fight
know.
Club.
Yeah, that's Fight Club, which brings us to something that I'll be getting to in a second. So, great thing that the lawyer said, it's unlikely that the investigators even knew what they were picking up. Obviously, it's clear what they think they saw.
And then there's like they did have a picture. The first picture they posted of the things that they pulled out of his room was just like, it was labeled as like suspicious contraband or whatever, but it was really just like pina colada mix, like a bottle of vinegar.
Pina colada, you say?
And Sprite.
You like pina colada?
So he was basically just making smoothies in his room. So it was either meth, soap, or smoothies.
Well, actually, I don't know. Let's rule out smoothies. I don't think it's smoothies. See, Jesse Pinkman in Breaking Bad, his signature ingredient was chili powder because he liked that kick. I'm pretty sure this kid, this little Heisenberg, his signature ingredient is pina colada mix.
Meth colada.
And so he just mixes that in with the meth. You know, he likes to be relaxed when he's all up on his crazy meth high, or the addicts that he sells to. Actually, I'm pretty sure this kid, he's just the inventor, and he has a distribution network. I'm pretty sure. He seems like the type of person who's a complete criminal underlord, living in student housing, being 21, making meth. Let's move on. So they find out he's got soap stuff. And whether this is true or not brings many, many interesting points. But let's focus on if it's soap right now.
Right.
So, an interesting thing that my friend brought up. We were talking about this very thing yesterday. And he said, if you made soap, though, like your own soap, you would talk about it all the time. You would literally not be able to shut up about it.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like being vegan. It's like, I'm doing something healthy for the world and stopping animals from being eaten. What are you doing? Kind of thing. Or just a hobby pastime type thing. I mean, I talk about things I do. It's like, oh, I do this podcast on the side. I play bass. I play video games. I read. I talk about things I do. I'm pretty sure this kid would talk about weird things he do. How come in these reports that we saw in the first one, we never heard anything?
Oh, yeah.
Well, another video came out from KSL, and they're interviewing one of the roommates, and he's confirmed that the Heisenberg had interesting hobbies, and once even made his own laundry detergent.
Yeah.
Wow, his own laundry detergent, you say?
That's...
Really? So now we have meth, possible pina coladas, meth with pina colada mix in it, soap, and now laundry detergent. We got like 5 things in the mix. This kid's a chemical genius.
Oh, he's brilliant.
At 21.
What is he doing at BYU?
Man, what is he doing? This kid should be like out on the streets slinging crystal, man.
Oh, yeah.
But
he should be saving the world.
He should be saving the world with his meth-making skills. So anyway, with soap now, we're going to segue away from the Breaking Bad thing for a moment. Just a moment, people. To go to another great iconic thing. Notice Fight Club. And this meme right here is a picture of Brad Pitt, and it says, "Tonight we make soap."
That's basically what it is, because he may or may not be into a Fight Club.
Yeah, I mean, why isn't he into a Fight Club? I bet this kid also thinks he's Tyler Durden. Him and Tyler Durden are the same person. Imagine Heisenberg and Tyler Durden as the same person. Wouldn't you be scared?
I would be terrified.
I would follow him to the ends of the earth. But that's what this is. It's getting so ridiculous. So another hashtag I came up with was Riviera Fight Club. Which I kind of hope the Riviera does have an underground fight club, because the thought of some of those kids like punching each other in the face and hurting each other just kind of makes me feel good inside, to be honest. As sadistic as that sounds. We went through the comments about this, and
there's a lot of really good classic Provo comments.
Yeah, I've always said, if you ever want to lose faith in humanity, just look at the comments of, well, just about anything.
The internet is endless.
The internet is endless. The internet, which was supposed to unite us, divided us in more ways than we can think of. But I'm sure if you check the comments of this video, you'll see a few. So,
but, like, as we all know, that a common enemy does indeed unite us.
Oh, yeah.
And in this case, the Heisenberg fellow has united a lot of people, because there's a lot of hatred for him.
Oh, tons.
Even though it's still suspected that...
It's still up in the air.
Yeah.
Casey and I found a really good comment.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's fantastic. This one's great. Casey, would you mind reading this?
Yeah.
This is from KSL that we found this comment.
And this is from Wheels Cole. Lousy excuse. Soap lab. This guy put at risk the life of his roommates and neighbors. Hope he gets the maximum penalty for his crime. Which is like... that's like the most... like unsympathetic thing I've ever.
I gotta say, it's a pretty good Provo comment.
It is a pretty good.
That is Happy Valley in a nutshell, right there.
That sums up Happy Valley, and I don't know if this person is from here, but I'm assuming they are, since this is like a KSL Utah news site.
Yeah, or they lived in Happy Valley at one point and left, but didn't mentally check out of this place.
And then there's always there is some shining light in this place, because the next person comments on that post and they say, you hope he gets the maximum penalty for a crime which he has not yet been convicted of committing. So it's like that makes sense. That person right there understands how
Thank you,
the law
stirring
works.
the pot.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, stirring the pot. And because the maximum penalty for what you can get is, like I said, life in prison, which I think is insane. But that's a whole nother
whether
thing.
This is true or not, we don't know.
Yeah. We don't even know.
Yeah, we have no clue at this
time.
But
that's like a Utah Valley thing is going straight to the
the worst possible thing.
Oh yeah.
And passing unnecessary judgment.
Oh, absolutely.
That is Happy Valley in a nutshell.
And even if he did make meth, even if this kid, this Heisenberg, was making meth in his apartment, he's 21, I don't think he should deserve life in prison.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who's rallying around this whole thing that he should, I don't know, there might be someone that thinks he should get executed for it, but...
Yeah, I lived in a house where all my roommates moved out in Orem, in part of Happy Valley, and a bunch of drug addicts moved in. And one of them was doing meth, one of them was doing acid, two of them were smoking weed all the time, and there was tons of other drugs going on, but those were each person had their specific drug they just loved to do.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
And yeah, I know, it's like the Ocean's 11 drug team. Whatever, each person has a skill in a certain drug. This girl will be tripping out on acid for days. This chick's taking meth and letting her teeth rot. And these dudes are toking weed like crazy. And who knows what else they were doing. I mean, there was a lot of suspicious, awful things going on in that house. But no matter what, I really hate these people, but I would not want them to have life in prison. And I lived with these people. These people hurt me mentally, physically, emotionally.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're crazy. And yet there's this person who's never met this kid, and he's like, oh man, this kid, he put everyone at risk.
I hope he rots.
Hope he rots. So, let's look at this in two perspectives real quick. So, let's say the kid is guilty. No matter what the outcomes for each of these sides of this coin, this doesn't go well for Happy Valley.
Oh, no.
So let's say this kid's making meth at BYU. Well, then the downside is this kid was making meth in student housing. I mean, I don't think we really need to dive into the cons of this and why it makes Happy Valley look bad. But that's the thing about Happy Valley, though. A lot of people, they put on this really fake persona, fake face, and they act like they're holier than thou, and they judge other people, and they're just rude to them. And if that kid was making meth, I mean, he's just a spitting image of Happy Valley, to be honest.
Pretty much.
A lot of the people here, they put on that fake persona, they're just super judgmental, and they're very rude. And then when they get caught with something, they come up with a cop-out that is extremely ridiculous. When someone in Happy Valley says something rude to me, and they're totally being serious, I'm like, dude, knock it off. And I call them on their crap, they say, dude, I'm just joking, man.
Oh, just joking. That's
just joking, yeah. I never saw that until I came here. Ever. It blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
How much it happens
that's a big
here.
Thing here.
And because they're just so rude. But they're like, oh, I'm just kidding. No, you're not. Shut up. And so, let's look at the other side of this coin. This kid was making soap. Well, how does this make Happy Valley look? Well, obviously it makes it look how it is. Sheltered, not having very much knowledge of anything because they're fairly ignorant here, and taking what tiny knowledge they have and blowing it into the most craziest thing imaginable. I'm surprised, that they didn't say he had weapons of mass destruction or something if they found a pistol in his room. I mean, that's how it is here. People take the smallest thing and they blow it up out of crazy, nuclear bomb proportion. Nuclear bomb explodes. You know, that one that they were afraid was going to hit when they were sleeping in their bomb shelters next to the microwave while growing up.
Yeah, basically it's just what it comes down to is like where the story's at. We still don't know. They haven't figured out if it's been like a week.
Yeah, and we're probably... The thing about this is, whether he's guilty or innocent, we're never going to know unless he confesses to making the meth.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only way we're going to know. But I doubt that's going to happen. And and to be honest with me, I don't know if he did or not.
I don't know if he did.
And there's not enough evidence for me to really say whether he did or not. There's so many pros and cons. The police say, oh yeah, totally fully functional meth lab. But then again, this is Provo where they take everything out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
The cops get called all the time in student housing for their neighbors having their music too loud. That happened in the apartment complex I lived in. It happened to a couple parties I went to. It didn't happen to the crack house I lived in, ironically enough. Which is crazy. They'll call the cops rather than going upstairs and be like, hey man, can you turn down your music?
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of people that live in Happy Valley.
Which is, I think, what's funny about them going into his room, because the kid was gone while those kids were breaking into his room and found the alleged meth lab. And he was gone, like, visiting a friend or something.
In the hospital.
And instead of them going up to him and talking to him about it beforehand and being like, hey, man, what's in your room? What are you doing? Can you knock it off? Can you stop making meth in your room, please?
Yeah, or just, confirm. At least they could get a lie out of the kid.
Yeah, at least they could, do some investigating with him themselves. But instead they waited till he was gone so they didn't have to confront him at all and bother with him so they could break into his room and find that meth.
Oh, that meth lab. Oddly enough, there was no meth found at the scene.
Yeah, there was no meth.
A lab.
Just a lab with
Dexter's
ingredients.
meth lab.
Dexter's meth lab.
So
and it's crazy. Apparently he didn't even find out that his room was broken into until his mom called him on the phone because she saw it on the news. And so he didn't even know that, he was being busted for meth until his mom told him.
Yeah, how would you like to be that? You're hanging out or whatever with a couple friends, or you're visiting a friend in the hospital, your mom calls you, and they're like, oh, hey, guess what, Heisenberg? They found the lab. Or, in reality, it's like, hey, you got busted for meth. Or whatever. I mean, that's crazy!
Oh, yeah.
It's out of the blue. I mean, if this kid is innocent, it must have shocked the crap out of him.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, if he was guilty, it must have shocked the crap out of him. No matter what, it would shock the crap out of me. But, do you have any final comments, Casey?
No, well, just, that's the story of...
Story so far.
Story so far that who knows if it's true. I mean, maybe we'll follow up on it in later episodes.
Yeah.
Just little tidbits here and there. But, yeah, we don't know.
We don't know, but
it may or may not be blown out of proportion.
It may not be, or it may be. We'll find out soon, or we may never really know. So my final thoughts, just, you're the type of people that, live in Happy Valley. This is what we deal with. And so we'll be discussing more and more about these wonderful aspects of this wonderful place as the weeks go on. So for the MCS1 show, I'm MCS1. And I want to thank Casey Walker for coming on once again.
Absolutely.
And until next time, take care of yourself and each other. And hide your meth lab!
Peace.